Good afternoon. Welcome back to the room, to our panel on what's next for European civil aviation research. As we all know, aviation wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. As we all probably agree, a highly ambitious target. And while a lot of the focus has been on the rapid rollout and upscaling of sustainable aviation fuels, aircraft engines and air traffic management technology is going to be key for the future of the sector. So in this panel, we'll focus on the technology and more precisely the research that goes into developing it. We'll also talk about the policy framework and research programs that should support industry, and I'm hoping to get this all done in 43 minutes now. So joining me on the panel are Rosalinde van der Vlies, Director of the Clean Planet at DG Research and Innovation, Eric Dalbies, Chief Technology Officer of Safran, Gary Way, Chief Technology Partnership Officer at Rolls-Royce, José Vicente de los Mozos, CEO of Indra Sistemas, Axel Krein, Executive Director of Clean Aviation, and Andreas Boschen, Executive Director at SESAR. Welcome, everyone, on stage. So to set the scene, we've heard about all these projects: next generation single aisle, hydrogen propulsion, electric flying, digitalisation, artificial intelligence, ATM, air traffic management reform. It feels like we've got this wave of innovation coming up. Is this the biggest, most important wave we've ever seen? Well, start with you.
I hope so.
You hope so, okay.
No, I think it's very clear, and I'm also very happy with the ambition of the aviation sector to contribute to Europe's ambition to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050. So I think we have already done a lot in the past in terms of preparing, for a decarbonisation pathway. I mean, we're not starting from scratch. We are working already for years in partnership with the industry. We started with Clean Sky 1, and this is really in the DNA also of how we do business as a European Commission. We love to partner up with industry because we think it's extremely important to have a common strategic research and innovation agenda and also to co-invest. And that's why we love to work in partnership, and I'm very happy that there are two executive directors from partnerships here also sitting at the panel. But I think what is really important for the European Commission is that, well, first of all, when we embarked on the Clean Aviation Partnership, we said, okay, we're going to focus on disruption. We want disruptive innovation. We don't want incremental innovation. And we really need to focus. We really need to focus on a strategic agenda that is not covering a lot of priorities. And I think this is really what the Clean Aviation Partnership is doing, a very clear focus on where we are investing in terms of research and innovation priorities, because we want to decarbonize, we want to accelerate the decarbonization. And we are actually here at a very good moment in time because we are waiting for the new Commission to take office. And as you all know, I think there will be now a huge emphasis not only on implementing our European Green Deal, but also on fostering the industrial competitiveness of our European industry. And in order to do so, I think it will be really important that we continue to invest together in research and innovation, not only in the short term, that we have solutions that we can deploy as soon as possible, but we need to continue to commonly invest in research and innovation also for our 2050 perspective. And let's not forget that, because there are some people who say, no, we need to accelerate, we need to deploy, and that's of course true, but at the same time, we need to continue to invest in research and innovation also for our longer term future, which is our 2050 perspective. So I think we have a really interesting time ahead, and I think basically let me end with two things that I think are extremely important. The first thing is that I think we need to develop a common strategic research and innovation agenda, not only between the European Commission and the industry, but also together with the member states. Because as the incoming Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation mentioned in her hearing with the European Parliament, only 10% of research and innovation investments are made at EU level, 90% is still happening at the national and the regional level. So we cannot afford as a European Union to be fragmented. And I think we need to change our mindset here, because you often feel that there's still a competition between EU member states. We need to change our perspective. We need to work together as a team Europe, and we need to compete with other parts of the world. So this is something that I think for the months to come will be really important. And the second thing is that we need to bridge, I know this is an old story, but I have to repeat it unfortunately again, we need to bridge the valley of death. And we need to make sure that we can move from research and development to deployment and scaling up in a seamless way.
So, to the industry panelists, is the current model of cooperation working in your opinion, or if not, what needs to change? Eric, you want to start?
Yeah. First, Rosalinde, you're right to hope so. As you say, from an insider's view from the industry, I can tell you that the period we are living today in terms of research and technology is just unprecedented. Guillaume referred to the fourth revolution of flight. Make it feasible, make it safe, make it affordable, and now make it sustainable. Not just this aspect is unprecedented, it's the intensity of the research and technology effort that is made throughout the industry that is unprecedented. And we have also a chance, it's the fact that in the time period where we have to do so, we are not that much, I would say, embarrassed by tons of development work. So it's really the time for research and technology. That's good news. In terms of partnerships and how do they work, we are working jointly with partnership both at European and national level. For the European solution, for sure, Axel will elaborate on what we are doing with Clean Aviation and also with the SESAR partnership. I think the beauty of this, for me, is the leverage effect and the inclusiveness of this partnership. Leverage effect, why? Because with this public funding coming from the EU, and I should say exactly the same for the national programs, this is not just nurturing our technology effort. This is a way for the private industry to put money on top of this public funding with a huge leverage effect on this. And inclusiveness now. The condition to receive this public money from either side is to build consortia, partnership, industrial partnership, embracing the supply chain and not just the OEMs and so on. So that's the way to not just prepare the relevant technologies for the future, but to also prepare our supply chain to be in a position when the development will be committed to be part of the game and suppliers of the products of the future, because technology is great, science is great, but at the end of the day, if we do not have products, we do not create value, we do not create growth, we do not create economic prosperity.
José, you're relatively new to this industry. You have a background in the car industry. When you come in here, what do you see that works well and in terms of research, technology development, and what do you see that doesn't work so well?
Well, first, thank you for the invitation. In Indra, in air traffic management manufacturing system, we are a relevant player in CNS, communication, aviation, surveillance. This business is very different to car industry. Why? Because aerospace is ecosystem. Because the technology is there, and for example, I appreciate SESAR initiative 15 years ago. We didn't have this in air industry. That technology is there, but later we need to implement. And that is not easy. Why? Because all the customers don't require this technology at the right speed. Everybody is agreed to have aerospace, digital, sustainable, but we have too many legacy. Could you imagine to change a powertrain in the plane when he's flying? That is the implementation of the technology in this industry. That is very different. Is for that it's very important when I listen to the other table round to be aligned between all the administration, the companies, and the regulation, because this is an ecosystem. I think today Europe is leader. I think we can continue to be leader, And we see in car industry, we have arrived later with EV cars because Chinese has go. At the same time, we create a GV in China. They develop a EV. I think in this industry now we are the leader, and we cannot lose this position. But for that, I think never is more important today than to work together.
Speaking of powertrains, Gary, you're developing the UltraFan right now. You're investing heavily into new technologies. What should the industry as a whole, what should people focus on?
I think it's interesting to reflect on the journey that led to clean aviation. Obviously, there was the predecessors in Clean Sky 2, and there was a certain philosophy approach to clean aviation in terms of demonstrating impact, and that's led to the focus on regional, on SMR, and then also the broader opportunity in terms of hydrogen technologies. And as the first sort of question from yourself, Jens, is very much that opportunity of revolution is there in front of us, and it's a crossroads of technology that is creating multiple routes towards the potential for not just net zero, but zero emission as well. And so in terms of industry with partners, with the European Commission, with universities, with research centres, then very much the opportunity, even recognising the very large scale of impact that clean aviation is going for, in that collaborative space, it's still creating the opportunity to explore quite widely different things. And there's a debate internally within the members as to where focus should lie, and how we get as many to Eric's point, many actors as possible involved in that, from not just the larger OEMs but the supply chain, and how do we create the sort of instruments there. So I think in terms of the future, given the potential implementation of those technologies from clean aviation, yet still recognising there's a significant amount of work to do to 2050, it will be how do we look to that next stepping stone to create the right environment for the core characteristics of collaboration, of innovation, which is still finding ways to be revolutionary. Because it's still going to be needed, and whether it's at levels of materials, levels of smart integration with airframers, etc., all of those things, we need to try and find a way to get those covered and considered in the opportunities that come forward. And within all of that, we've got to make sure that we communicate externally to the public, to the citizens, etc., because these revolutionary technologies, to Florian's point before about safety, we've got to not just do it for research and innovation's sake, but we've got to find a way to take that technology to market and be with the utmost highest confidence to be able to deploy it from day one with safety. We can't rely on perhaps a learning approach, which there was historically. That won't work in this new phase.
So, Axel, to what extent do you think does the work that is done in clean aviation cover this transition that everyone's been talking about, and where does what's the next step that needs to be done?
Yeah, as indicated, I think we are on a good track in order to achieve a couple of points, and I'd like to mention first that the target we have been setting together with the whole community is 30% efficiency increase at aircraft level. So 30% is unprecedented when you look back in the recent history of aircraft development. That was the very early days of aviation. Those jumps would have been possible, but in the recent days of aviation, 30% is a huge step. I think that's quite amazing. And when you look at the use of sustainable aviation fuels, then either SAF or hydrogen, we'll get to roughly 90% carbon reduction. So it's a huge step on the journey to become carbon neutral. First, 30%. Secondly, what we are doing is we are exploring the opportunities of hydrogen as an alternative to obviously kerosene, but also as an alternative to SAF. SAF being in this context e-fuel. Because when you look at the context, we're always speaking about biofuels, but when you look at the amount of biofuels which can be generated, it's limited. We need 500 million tons by 2050 of whatever. Kerosene, no. So either hydrogen or SAF, so one of the two. And when you look at those amounts, I see the only opportunity to go e-fuels because that is scalable. And when you then look at the cost of e-fuels in comparison to hydrogen, then it doesn't look so brilliant for the e-fuels. So then hydrogen seems to be cheaper. So what we are doing, we are going to explore the opportunity either to burn hydrogen directly in an engine or via a fuel cell to establish electrical energy, which can be then propelling the aircraft. And thirdly, what we are doing is on top of the minus 30%, on top of the exploring the hydrogen opportunities, we are looking as well as how can we go as quickly as possible into the market, into airline use from the finalization of the technology development. And there we are working, and I think Florian mentioned that already, very closely together with the EASA in order to make sure that at the end of our phase, the technology readiness level 6, so demonstrated either on ground or in flight in a relevant environment, we are also mandating the project consortia to deliver a CRL6 certification readiness level. So this is a totally new concept which we have been developing together with EASA over the last 2 years, so that not only technology readiness level will be looked at, but this CRL certification readiness level is a very important point to shorten the time between the technology work and the final implementation in the market. And I think that is maybe something where I see the biggest hurdle right now, that we may be not fast enough between the finalization of what we are doing and the entry into the market. And I think there, and let's take an example, the Americans have an instrument in order to bridge that valley of death. Rosalinde mentioned that. Probably better than what we do because they have just recently, 1.5–2 years ago, launched 2 aircraft level demonstrators, truss-braced wing and blended wing body. So 2 aircraft level demonstrators, and this is an instrument we don't have in Europe. And I think that's definitely something we should consider and see how we can be working not only at component demonstration, but that we move the next step into this aircraft level demonstration in order to shorten the time frame between technology development and into service. And then we also need to look at overall at the competition, and the competition, I think that was said this afternoon already, is mainly China and the US. And when you look at the amounts of money which is being invested there, I think that's also something we need to look at. Is it sufficient? What we do is good, yes, but it's first not well aligned in Europe. We are quite fragmented. And secondly, also the overall amount, I think, is not sufficient.
Andreas, ATM is the other component in this whole equation. What's the potential that you can discover and
Thank you. Rosalinde asked us to be disruptive. So our theme is make Europe the most efficient and environmentally friendly sky to fly in the world by 2045. And this has to be a digital European sky where we need more digitalization, we need more automation, and Florian touched already upon this. To become more environmentally friendly, we have to come to trajectory-based operations, that the airplanes are flying as they want to fly, and they're not constrained by air traffic management, but supported. The optimal climb, the optimal flight level, the right top of descent, and so on and so forth. For this, we need technology. We also need more air and ground communication. How do we exchange more data between the air and the ground? And we are working on this, and we are rather optimistic. In our case, we are having already more than 100 research solutions, 130 research solutions done. They have been proven in the lab environment Axel was mentioning, and more than 100 are improving the environment. and more than half of them are in operations. We have digital remote towers, we have extended arrival management, we have cross-border free route. So a lot has been done and is contributing to make our sector more efficient and more sustainable. But as Guillaume Faury also mentioned, of course, there is such a demand for air transport that we have to continue. And so we are optimistic and we try to be bold and disruptive.
So the discussion about the framework program 10 is already taking shape and people are discussing what it should entail. I want to talk about the industry's wish list for this, and then of course give you the opportunity to respond. So who wants to take it? What do we need to focus on?
I may start.
Yes.
You're talking, Jens, about a wish list. Hopefully the industry has not just a wish list, rather a vision that will support after that a series of priorities that we will have to share with the European Commission and national programs to make it something substantial, especially to take the lead just after we have completed the clean aviation program and so on, because there is a life after clean aviation, after SESAR and so on. It's not just for the upcoming generation of aircraft, but also to prepare the next future. My vision to date of what should be the need once we will have completed the targets recalled by Axel should be very much about what has made already, when we look back, the success and the current leadership position of aviation in Europe. What have we built on? We have built on technological excellence, relevant solutions, an industry, an industrial footprint, and ability to procure what we have to build and so on. If I transfer this in the world that is just in front of us, technological excellence, we still need to be at the forefront of it. And we enjoy a very positive position on this. That's a way of competition and make sure that we take the opportunity to lead the race again. Okay, so technological excellence for sure will nurture what has to be made realistic in the FP10. Second, industrial competitiveness. Otherwise, we will have the brilliant ideas that will be manufactured elsewhere. And finally, I would say sovereignty. Sovereignty in the meaning that in the world in front of us, already current world and the world in front of us, we are quite sure that there is increased tension about our possibility to safely procure what we need and so on. Sovereignty for me means just reducing our dependency to adverse externalities. And we face a lot of adverse externalities in raw materials, in limitation to export, with export control of some technologies and so on. So having a vision on what could nurture the program about this could also have a place, to my mind, in what could be at the program file, I would say, of the FP10.
Gary?
Yes, and those key themes, sustainability, competitiveness, sovereignty, we've seen mentioned in a number of the very significant reports done by Draghi Heiter over the past few weeks, and those clearly provide a strong foundation to the range of thought. In terms of the potential technology direction, then the journey to 2050 is still clearly very relevant. The work of ASD and other communities in creating the Destination 2050 is again a key point of focus for us, a sort of lighthouse in terms of the work that's required. And looking ahead into the potential of FP10, it's, where does that ambition lie in terms of landing in the timeline to 2050? There's a lot of focus on technology that can support products for 2035, which part of the focus clearly of clean aviation. How do we move beyond that, but in a pace which means that we're faster, that we're quicker, that the innovation that we can work on not just is very, very smart, very, very refined, but is something that can be brought to market and has those underpinning industrialization points which enable the sort of innovation cycle to deliver quicker. So yes, we might expect there to be, from my perspective, more work on propulsion, but how propulsion integrates is more electrified, is using even more different fuels. We look forward to those sort of solutions, but with other engaging digital technologies as well, which enable those products to operate even more efficiently and effectively. So it's a broad spectrum, I suppose, in front of us. The smart bit is the co-creation approach that we need to work on collectively over, I would suggest, the next few months, which is going to be interesting because that month's activity is leading to impact over decades. So how we do that intelligently and smartly is going to be really key.
And Indra Sistemas is heavily into ATM, obviously, into ATM technology. Is it all about digitalization in your part of the aviation business, or what else are we looking at? Yes.
Yes, of course. I think the digital sky, that is the future. I think we need to continue to invest in R&D. That is very important for the digitalization. I think we expect that with SESAR continue. Also in Indra, we have advanced with iTech, with some partners. This is a transatlantic new idea, because we believe we are engaged in 2050, and we believe in the sky unique, digital, smart, and sustainable. There's no doubt about this. Now the key question is what will be the speed to implement this?
Yeah, Rosalinde, does this all align with what you're thinking?
Well, I think we are all reading the same reports, and I think the messages from these reports are pretty clear. I think, looking ahead, there are also some clear messages from the incoming commissioner, Mrs. Zaharyeva. She will put a lot of emphasis on simplification, and this is not new, but I really believe this lady means business, which means that we basically facilitate the lives of our beneficiaries, making sure that the money reaches our potential beneficiaries faster, that we, reduce the complex administrative requirements, and I think when it comes to, for instance, partnering up, with industry and member states, I think partnerships will continue to play a very important role also in the next MFF, but we will need to simplify the governance, the structure of how we do partnerships, and probably also, now currently under Horizon Europe, we have 3 different types of partnerships, so this all looks very complex. We have an enormous amount of number, so I can already predict a bit, if we want to push through a simplification agenda, definitely there is some scope to simplify the way that we as European Commission partner up with industry. The second point is that I think we need to move to an ecosystem approach where we are linking demonstration with industrialization, taking into account also the infrastructure around it. And I think this is all nothing new, but I think we need to make a step change and also break silos and continue to break silos, starting with the European Commission itself. Because of course, when you take an ecosystem approach and where you really want to support a specific industry, you need to take into account the regulatory requirements, the investments. So I think there is a lot still of homework to do to connect dots and to come to a coherent approach. And the last thing I would say is that I think we need to have a common strategy between what we are doing at the European level together with what is happening at the national and regional level and together with the industry. And that for me would be a starting point. Because I think we don't have a lot of time when we move into the next multi-annual framework to sit together for 2 years to say, what are actually our priorities? I think we have been doing a lot of strategic thinking together, so I think we need to get our act together, agree on a common European strategy, and then really hit the ground running and start with implementation when we reach FP10.
I wrote down simplification of partnerships. Axel and Andreas, does that ring a bell? What are you seeing?
When I look at the evolution of the partnership, I think we need to speak about two things. The scope, which for me is a very important point, because at the moment we are concentrating on new regional aircraft or technologies for new regional aircraft and technologies for new short-medium range aircraft, which is roughly 55% of the CO2 emission. So we are not working at all on the other 45% new long-range aircraft technologies. In some cases, they are quite similar. In other cases, it's very different technologies which are applicable to long-range aircraft. I think that's why at the moment we are fixing only one, although I may say fixing is maybe over-exaggerated because we are concentrating very, very much on the propulsion technologies. Roughly 3/4 of what we do is focused on propulsion. I mean, two gentlemen to the right here, they love it because that's their core business. But what we assume is that other programs, other initiatives are covering the aerodynamic improvements, are covering the system improvements, are covering the structural improvements which are necessary. And I think at the moment we are, I would say, guessing. We are doing an informed guess that others are doing it, but there is no security that this is being done in that way. I think that was also mentioned by Rosalinde, that we need to be able in the end to look from a Team Europe point of view to see, okay, what needs to be done in order to push those new programs and what needs to be done at what level. And I think we need to come to a kind of workshare. I mean, you're all used to workshare discussions, but we need to have those discussions. What am I going to do? What are you going to do? How do we interface? At what time? And that needs to happen at European level. And I think this is not happening right now. So that's one of my concerns, that we are guessing at the moment that it all fits nicely together, but it's more guess, and I think that's definitely a way where we can improve and where we need to improve. And the second thing, which I believe definitely we need to focus on, is the speed to enter into market, the industrialization, the ramp up, the operations. I think this is definitely something which goes to a certain extent beyond technology, but that needs to be looked at right now because technology is determining very much the downstream processes, and if we are not looking at it right now, I think it will be difficult. And every year we take and look at the latest aircraft Europe has been put into the market, the A350, it took 8 years. 8 years from the finalization of the technology development up to the EIS.
But today we would be happy if it was only 8 years, right?
Yeah, but if we were able to do it within 5 or 6, I mean, the benefit we would be achieving there is significant. And I think that's why we should not just look at the technology itself to reduce the percentage of fuel burn or CO2 emission, but we also need to look at what needs to be done in order to bring those products into the market as quickly as possible.
So has the industry focused too much on propulsion? Yes, sorry, Andreas. You can answer that too, actually, if you want.
I'm not sure I can answer this, but I wanted to echo what Axel was saying, and I wanted to reply positively to Rosalinde again. Air traffic management, we will adopt the European Air Traffic Management Master Plan in December. And this is a roadmap for research over the next 5 years, for deployment over the next 10 years, and how to bring us to 2045. And we are accelerating. Our research projects now are quicker than before. And we are also facilitating market uptake with different initiatives, digital sky demonstrators, working with the EASA, working with standardization and so on. And we have to make the system more agile, because Axel is producing, and you, Safran and Rolls-Royce, you're producing the airplane of the future, and you want to fly in our airspace. But we have to know how many planes, at which flight level, at which speed, which turnover time at the airport. And this we will learn over the next years. And ADM, airspace management, has to be ready to welcome this more complex environment. And therefore, we have to make our system more agile. And this is what we want to do.
Are the current... Sorry, did you want to?
If I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Jens. So there's a spectrum of activity that's clearly required, and I think the really interesting thing for us as an entire sector is some of those things are deployable at different rates. The benefits that can come from operational improvements, from an engine maker's point of view, and I appreciate I'm slightly detached, appear to be something that could come to bear much quicker. There's also the focus on non-CO2 issues as well, which don't think we've touched on exactly here, and operational aspects of that, which is being considered by the SESAR community, by the sort of research communities across the spectrum, and bringing real operational benefit there, which can also impact the CO2. So I think, yeah, there's a range of things which we need to be smart about when we choose the technology journey, when we choose the industrial journey, and when we choose the deployment journey.
And just to complement with the appropriate levers that we have, like my neighbor, I'm an engine maker, but unlike Gary, I'm also an equipment maker with Safran on board an aircraft, and not just electrical equipment, wiring, nacelles and so on, but also cabin interiors, seats and so on. So it's not just about propulsion globally, it's about lightweighting everything we can touch on the aircraft. It's about substituting with SAF. It's about electrical technology on board the aircraft as a substitute to thermal energy when it's more relevant and efficient. So we have many, many levers. Some we share between the community, others are more specific to each and any of the various players, and we are playing on all these levers through our research and technology program with the support of public funding, be it national or supranational.
Are the current problems in the supply chain and production that we've all heard about, are they slowing down innovation and your pace of investment into new projects?
I would say probably the answer is very much differentiated depending on if you are a big company or an SME. For groups like those represented here, I think that all in all, we are organized and we have financial allocations and so on that make it possible to run this despite the fact that for the time being, we are facing a supply chain problem. We are sometimes part of the supply chain problem. It's not that our suppliers that are causing the disruption to Guillaume. Guillaume is not in the room, no. Okay. So this means that when I look now at the tier 2, tier 3 and so on, I'm quite worried. Why? Because these companies are by essence smaller and they often face balance sheet problems. Why? Because they had to recover from the COVID, and at the time they had to recover from the COVID, they had to prepare the ramp up. So that's very much capex intensive moment for them. They have not rebuilt their balance sheet, and at the same time, to be in the race for disruption and so on, we call them and say, be part of the team, invest with us to prepare the technologies of the future. For some of them they can, for others they can't. So that's where I see a risk, not that much that we as OEs and tier 1 players slow down the race and the pace of innovation, but in the fact that we may face difficulties to embark our tier 2, tier 3 as part of the journey.
See, Gary, you echo that?
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. And bringing SMEs in to any of the activities we do in the future is going to be key to create that sort of brain space for more innovation to come. I think, again, the really interesting thing in terms of what we do in the future is how much we focus on the sort of technology to deliver that sustainability impact and balance that with the potential application of innovation to make our products more durable, to make them more competitive, to reduce the strategic supply chain issues that we see around us. How can we use design methods, how can we use materials which create separation, and I don't mean Europe in an island sense, but create our own sovereignty point that enables that freedom of choice to innovate without feeling constrained. So how we blend that in with everything else in the future is going to be, I think, really interesting as well.
When realistically will we see the next generation European commercial aircraft, I guess the next narrow body? When is that happening?
Where is Guillaume? The question is for him.
I'm also asking because I've interviewed him a few times, and that launch date seems to be moving to the whatever is left. Right?
Maybe I can give an answer in the name of the industrial team, including the teams from the aircraft manufacturer in Europe. I can tell you that from a technology standpoint, all these teams are working together, and they are all on the same agenda, being ready by the end of this decade with the famous TRL 5 to 6, depending on the level of residual risk that we accept and the gap to cover, to be in a position for the aircraft manufacturer to make the decision to launch the operational development by the end of the decade. After that, the reference date for this is 2035 for the entry into service, and then it's the question for Guillaume.
Years, right?
Then it's the question for Guillaume for the cycle, the development cycle, with the methods of 2030, not with the methods of today. We are also working at engine level about shortening the development cycles of engines, and the aircraft manufacturer is working also in terms of engineering processes on the reduction of the cycles for the development of an aircraft.
Axel, your guess?
I share the date 2035 as the earliest possible, but it very much depends whether we can synchronize the technology development all over Europe. And at the moment, what we are synchronizing is the stakeholdership working in clean aviation. I can only speak on behalf of clean aviation, because there we are organizing the stakeholdership to be synchronized in what they are doing, and all 300 entities, being it SMEs, research organizations, unis, and big industrial companies, they're all synchronized to work towards the technology readiness level 5 or 6 by the end of this decade, 28, 29. I think there we are synchronizing. But what is happening elsewhere, I don't know whether we are so well synchronized there. I have my doubts whether all of that is synchronized. And secondly, and I come back to what I said before, whether the industrialization is well enough prepared in order then to go into the certification process. Instead of 8 years, as I said before, let's do a 5-year or 6-year. And then it's also a question of ramping up, because if you then produce 1 or 2 or 3 aircraft a month, that will not work. So you need to have a steep ramp up. And I'm not sure whether these industrial elements are already sufficiently covered on top of the other elements which we are not controlling by ourselves.
Are there any questions in the audience? Please. Microphone, please. First row. Here.
So thank you for a very interesting panel. Jan P., Secretary General ESD. I would like, Rosalinde, you touched upon in your, I think, first intervention also that you would like to see that we need to do something with an old problem, valley of death. What do you think can be done when it comes to the valley of death?
Well, first of all, I think a better coordination, of course, we start with the European level between different programs. I mean, we have several programs, investment programs at EU level that cover not only research and development, but also the deployment side. So I think there, and this is also something that our president has committed to look at the entire architecture of the current MFF, and then to see, whether we can simplify the architecture and also with a clear focus on delivering impact. But I also think that we need to look at what can be done at national level here. I'm thinking, for example, at what we call IPSIs, the important projects of common European interest, which take very long at this moment in time, and there is also a commitment from our president to look into this, to shorten the times. And I think there, Eric, you mentioned small and medium-sized enterprises. I think maybe waiting 5 years for an IPSI is feasible for a huge company, but maybe for a small company, these are simply not timeframes to work with. I think also we need to look, for example, at the state aid rules that we have in the European Union. So I think in order to bridge this valley of death, we need to really connect the dots. And this we need to do not only at the European level, but also at the national level. But of course, we need to be very careful then not to create a new valley of death between the basic research and the more applied research and demonstration. So I think we need to be really very smart and not solve one valley of death and creating another one.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes.
Hi, thanks a lot for your amazing panel. That's just really eye-opening in terms of innovation. You all mentioned their Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers and OEMs. What about the upstream? We still have their bottlenecks in their strategic material supply. If there is any way you are looking into solving that problem or challenge in a way where reprocessing centers or recovery and setting up as a secondary, not only primary material supply, is something that you would consider of solving and participating in that solution. Thank you.
Who wants to take it? Gary?
So I think from a propulsion point of view, the engine is significantly recyclable at the moment. The interesting thing clearly with metallics is that that's probably very proven. I think as we move forward into even more non-metallics composites, that's going to be things that need work. And I think that needs further thought and further consideration. Eric?
Yeah. So this was for the end of life of the products. If I complement with the beginning of life, and maybe your question about security of supply of critical raw materials, for instance, or just accessibility to some of them. So you told us about propulsion, also for electrical equipment. You know that some rare earths are extremely critical and not available in many places in the world. Typically what we are doing with our research and technology activity in terms of materials, which is instrumental to groups like ours, is to work on substitution, possible substitution, on top of the recycling, which is for sure a virtuous circle. And that's, we dedicate a lot of our energy and resources, financial and human resources, to the preparation of the next generation of materials that could help us having some decoupling versus the current sourcing that we are obliged to comply with. So that's something that is not forgotten, and it weighs a lot in my P&L for research and technology in the coming 5 years.
So as Rosalinde and Eric can see, we're way over on our clock here, and I'm told we have to stop. Next up is the Christoph Grüdler keynote speech, but first I'd like to thank the panel for